one through again. What else have we got? Tristana, very powerful. Lilia, Ezreal, Leona. A lot of these picks can have a huge amount of value.
I'm curious how on earth this last one's going to turn out. They've got all of the learnings from the previous games, and TT and Cassante removing the safe weak side top laner away from FPX.
So, this is something I was thinking about in the break. The difference between ZDZ and Hoya on Renekton compared to the Cassante and the Poppy was absolutely monstrous. I think both these top laners have failed to get the Renekton pass. If we joke about that with the Nidalee, there's definitely one there for the Renekton as well. I wonder whether this will open up something like the Cannon or the Poppy a little bit more for Hoya and get away from that Renekton. I mean, Renekton is still up and available, but I'd much prefer to see something like the Lilia, Ezreal, the Leona, even the Tristana could be valuable.
So let's see what the first pick is going to end up being here. Renekton up and available. I mean, the Renekton won against Cassante. Is that not just fine to have the Cassante in the game if you're going to play Renekton anyway?
Yeah, this to me feels like this feels to me like a misread. And yeah, I mean the problem I had with the Renekton for both these top laners is that yes, they had that feel-good moment in the early few levels of the game, but that was it. Hoya got 1v3'd in the game though, Chem. He played that on Lost On, and things fell apart beyond that point. ZDZ in that very last game as well just couldn't be that front line. He was basically non-existent towards that late game. I'm really worried about this Renekton pick. I don't think it's worked for either top laner.
I wonder if this is a signal that TT are going to pick up the pace here in game number 5, that they want early dominance. We'll see what other laners they end up going for. The Lucian banned away, which has been like one of the biggest answers in that mid lane, could end up being a Corki game for Ucal instead. But things like the Zeri have made it through that have been banned throughout the rest of the series, so could be a Zeri angle for Ucal. But again, that goes against what we just said about maybe TT speeding things up with this Renekton.
Well, the thing is, CT specifically have used that Zeri to hop over walls to get Ucal involved in early fights. We saw that an awful lot versus OMG in the Knights Rivals stage, so maybe for them specifically it can speed that up. I don't disagree with you, but I think TT, maybe they just trust Ucal's hands on this pick. He was one of the first people to pick up that mid lane Zeri. Of course, it can be a flex as well, but not saying it's going into that mid lane. I wonder what else they're going to lock in right now. Could go towards the Ezreal too.
I am saying it is going into the mid lane. Like, Ucal, it's his most played mid laner, which is crazy.
He loves it.
It only just came in at the end of the split, it feels like, but he's got 9 games on the Zeri mid. He's got a 78% win rate on the Zeri mid over 9 games as well. Like, this has been a massive pick for Ucal in the mid lane. It's locked in. FPX didn't ban it for game number 5. Maybe they'll regret that decision.
FPX not locking in a top laner here. I wonder whether not locking in top lane and jungle could come back to bite them. They're going to lose the Lilia, presumably. Wouldn't surprise me if they lost something which can fight back against Hoya on the Renekton too. Maybe the Cannon gets banned away from ZDZ, because I think if you lose those topside early game picks for TT, what you were mentioning in terms of TT looking to accelerate the game around the Renekton, potentially around the roaming area as well, because we know how good Ucal is on that, I think FPX might have deprived themselves the tools to fight against that. And in the game 5, look, they're trying something different. Yeah. I just don't know whether this is the best angle.
The real question to me is, do we come full circle now and see MilkyWay, the carry jungler of carry junglers, lock in Ivan for game number 5 against TT with his Tristana mid and his Ezreal?
Say it ain't so.
I could believe it. I can believe it. The Cannon is going to be banned from ZDZ, as you said, as well as that Lilia away from MilkyWay. Still plenty of AP carry jungles available. Don't worry, Ivan's not the only choice.
Could go towards that Sejuani as well if you wanted to go towards that. ZDZ, he has been a bit of a tank connoisseur at points. He has played a lot of that Ornn back when he was on Weibo as well, back in spring. He was a player of that. But it does leave you at the risk of a topside snowball. Ornn, when he gets level 6, yeah, absolutely can come out of lane and influence the map, but last pick for MilkyWay, last pick for their superstar jungler in what could be the last game of 2024 for FunPlus Phoenix. It all rides on him. I look at this draft and I say, you're not getting any help from that top lane early on. TT, they have yet to lock in their bot lane as well. We're talking about signature champions. If you have not seen 1xN's Aphelios, this is very much a true hover. He is a monster at that pick. But maybe not to be. Definitely was tempted by that one. It looks like it's a topside-centric draft from TT, but Varus is very, very happy to being a lane-dominant island by himself.
Feels like a lane-centric draft from TT, really, doesn't it? With the Varus and potentially a Karma locked in the bottom lane. They're looking for double range. That's what it feels like. Does that indicate maybe a lethality Varus? I wouldn't particularly enjoy that against the Norn, but then I suppose you do have a Brand and a Zeri. Maybe you can go lethality.
I think right now, because of the changes to Varus and his passive, and I think it has really become around to the on-hit again, MilkyWay locks in Kindred. Game 5, his signature pick. We've talked about it for many players, but MilkyWay on the Kindred stands first and foremost amongst them. Game on. It is all in his hands, and he has a carry pick.
FPX say screw magic damage. We just want 3 AD carries. There's 5 in the game, and it's 3 versus 2 in favor of FPX. TT, a very different draft of their own, with a Zeri in the mid lane, with a Varus coming out in the bottom lane for the first time this series, and Beichuan with that Brand. But my goodness, FPX, when it comes down to it, when it comes to game number 5, they go classic, they go vintage, and they go for MilkyWay's Kindred.
Yeah. We haven't taken much time to start scraping silver here in LPL Summer Playoffs. We have 18 best of 5s and only a few in. We get ourselves the distance for the first time. I think this game from ThunderTalk is very much about their lanes. How much can they brutalize just their individual lanes and start skirmishing around the Renekton and around Ucal on the Zeri, which he's made a name for in this summer. And on the other side, FPX, can they survive that initial onslaught and get MilkyWay into the game? Can they get their triple AD carries online and behind that front line of that all?
TT want to take over early. Ucal wants a bit of redemption for some of the mistakes this split. But FPX, when it matters the most, they bring out the Kindred from MilkyWay. It's 13-4 across the course of his career, a 75% win rate. He's an absolute demon in the jungle, and he hollers back to his spring performances on the carry jungles as he brings out his signature one last time. Game number 5, Silver Scrapes has finished, and now silence in the arena. FPX, it feels like a favorite coming in today, but honestly, it depended who you asked, and there was a lot of 3-2 predictions. Some of those 3-2 predictions will be correct at the end of things, as now TT start things off aggressively, look to invade. Care is here to try and protect his jungler, and FPX will do enough, not just to push them away, but maybe look for more as well. Deokdam and Life in the brush, getting a chunk onto Ucal to start the laning phase.
So TT get an early ward down. That'll help track MilkyWay a little bit. I think that TT, they're not expecting MilkyWay to do that many aggressive plays. I think it's hard to do that when you're against, the Zeri that can roam very easily, and you've got the Renekton as well. I think particularly when it's Ucal on that Zeri, that's when it becomes a roaming threat. And of course, this destructive bot lane of the Varus Nautilus as well. I haven't seen it that much in summer, but the Varus has had some buffs to the attack speed build because of changes to that passive. That ward is mainly just there to make sure that MilkyWay isn't where the play that Beichuan wants to make is. Let's see if Beichuan can leverage that.
Beichuan needs to be proactive, needs to make things happen. Again, this is a game of lane dominance for TT, with a Renekton up top, with the Varus down bot, with a Zeri mid that does extremely well into the other AD carries. Although, I'm not sure Tristana is necessarily her best matchup in that mid lane. We'll see how Ucal does. It's certainly something that he is a bit of a specialist on down in the mid lane. But, I mean, returning to some of the points we've been making about these two teams, actually 2v2 in the bottom side. 1xN dodges the Q though and won't lead to anything. But I mean, 1xN Ucal, these carries for TT that have been, making their way, making their names for themselves. Like 1xN, this is his first ever playoffs. It's only his 3rd ever split, and I remember him coming in as a rookie, being such a hyped up prospect, and perhaps has a chance onto Deokdam as Feather starts a fight, but traded fairly even. Deokdam chunk low though.
1xN and Feather, the 2v2s have been really solid across this 5-game series as well. Again, 1xN, first playoff series for him, but he has really, really had some of those high moments. Look, he's not been without his faults too, folks. We've all seen those Ezreal lead forwards at this point, and I'm sure they'll be replaying in the back of his mind. So, but that is a hook of all time, all right? So we see once again, just the extra damage starting to get racked up here, and 1xN on the changed Varus, which has that, basically almost like a Jinx reset on his passive now. If you get that champion kill, you go up to like a 3 attack speed cap, and a whole load of attack speed and AD and AP comes through from that too. Needs to be really careful letting Wall and Extend get into the play. Mark spawn on this bot Scruttle. Bot lane control over to TT.
First stack, and it leads straight into a fight. Beichuan sent away his feather. Tries to flash under the tower, but Deokdam survives. They try and get more as life gets out as well, but MilkyWay has chunked Beichuan. Ucal starts the crab. So MilkyWay might just try and burst this one down and spite it, but he can't. Forced to flash away from feather as Care gets a good trade onto Ucal, and MilkyWay jumps back into the fray once more. Crab taken, nobody dies, but TT get the crab.
MilkyWay denied his first stack of the game, and that bot side scuttle fight was all about this 2v2. 1xN Feather using this brutal 2v2 of the Varus Nautilus to make sure that they could control Deokdam and life on the Ezreal Rakan, which is not a bad 2v2 in itself. It's just 1xN and Feather played it out better. Ucal has flash, might have to use it.
Immediately has to flash away there. Big chunk from FPX. Care now with a flash advantage in a matchup where we all know Tristana can do dangerous things in a 1v1. Ucal has to be so cautious, and in fact, they'll just go for a reset. Doesn't have TP. Okay, he's cancelling it.
He doesn't. He's back already. I think he already teleported back in, tried to get some wave control there. There is one thing you can do on the Kindred where you can kind of wait for the mark to reapply on the top scuttle after the other one's died. Problem is, that's happening at the time point for Beichuan to get into this bot side river after his first back and make this as well. Beichuan had that first back, didn't buy that pot early again, and got himself that Fated Ashes. So MilkyWay denied those first marks of the game, and on his signature pick, which we will continue to refer to because it's so cool that it comes out in a Game 5, folks, doesn't get himself the easiest possible start. TT, they have been winning the early games most of the time versus FPX, and this is an important one to do so again.
TT understand what MilkyWay's objectives are in this early game and do a fantastic job of shutting it down in that bot side river. Deokdam with a nice trade onto 1xN, but the Q goes wide, so not too much of an advantage there. But MilkyWay, to reiterate the statistic that I mentioned as we came into the game, 17 games of Kindred in the LPL, 13-4 is the scoreline. It is truly something else. Care jumps in for these trades, a level up in the mid lane and dodging away from the Ultra Shock Laser as well. Care really taking control of that mid lane against Ucal's signature pick of this series.
Yeah, I think that chunk which came into mid lane really hurt Ucal because he's lost control of that wave. He's lost a lot of XP from that too. So this is something that MilkyWay brought about here. You can see that Beichuan has to come over to at least make sure that there's no dive threat after this point. Next time that bomb came up, there was a chance that Ucal could jump in and flash out from under that turret. Let's check in on the rest of the map. Hoya is on the Renekton. Hasn't been 1v3 this time, so I guess he'll be happy on that side, but that's definitely something to be afraid of. Oh, 1xN.
1xN's kind of low here. Deokdam is going to be able to get his W off. 1xN caught under the tower. Oh! Mystic shot, not quite enough. The barrier is, though.
That's MilkyWay in the bush. This is going to be a dead. Varus all the same. Wolf going to stop that back. Just hounding 1xN at the ankles. They're going to use a Q to just get a couple of minions out. He knows he's dead. It's just what he can do after this point. Actually, teleport coming in. That works out very well for them. 1xN saving Private Varus. Mission worked out.
Really importantly, denying MilkyWay a stack. Again, MilkyWay had put his passive onto 1xN. FPX was setting up for that dive to finally get MilkyWay a stack on his passive. This Kindred is the pick for FPX. This is meant to be their saving grace. TT are playing around it beautifully.
Now, MilkyWay, you just kind of expect him to explode with marks at some point in the game, but it's not been easy coming at this point. And FPX, with this kind of early game, reminds you, over the course of this year, the revolution that this team has gone through, with MilkyWay coming into this roster, bringing stuff like this Kindred through, it's revolutionized the way that they've thought about draft, it's the way that they've thought about the early game as well. This has been, this is what we've seen from FPX this year and how they want to play the game. They do get themselves that first mark here now onto that top scuttle, finally for MilkyWay, but I think it's also testament to how much some other teams have grown around the league as well, where FPX, they were up there towards a top 4 team in the LPL at points in spring. TT were absolutely not at that kind of margin, at least in spring. They are now contending FPX here. They've had a good early game. They've been beating FPX in the early game most games in this series. Yeah, they've been contested in other areas, but they have evolved to step up to the plate here and make this a genuinely very entertaining series.
Such an even start to the third game of the series as well. You really couldn't ask for more, could you? The 3 grubs for TT could be a difference maker for them when you've got a Zeri that's going to be going into those side lanes. Those towers will not last long, that is for sure. TT, one of their weaknesses has been that macro. It does feel like the longer this series goes on, it is improving. I wonder if this is one of the things the coaches are focusing on behind the scenes and like trying to feed them information of like, no, not like this, not like that, like this. Which I will say, you know, playoffs might be a little bit late for that kind of development, but you know what, better late than never.
Yeah, I think one thing you can learn is about these more common rotation timings. Where does Life like to move on the map? Where does MilkyWay like to move on the map? Of course, FPX will be doing the same to TT with their early game. And of course, in this game, gold is very even here so far. And one of the things we came out of draft was saying that TT wanted to play around lane. They wanted to play around a brutalized early game through the Varus, through potentially the Zeri roaming as well. That was very dangerous for them. I will say, though, TT have stopped MilkyWay getting on the board very comprehensively in this early game. I still don't think they've hit their MO. I don't think they've managed to brutalize these lanes in the way that they would have liked to. They need themselves an early game watershed moment where they can start getting some big kills somewhere.
Especially in this mid lane where Care has got himself 3 plates. He's 500 gold up individually. You know, talked about the Zeri pick being a bit of a lane bully. It's not working against the Tristana. Obviously, Tristana, like, kind of the OG AD carry mid lane bully. Like, she's been doing this before, for years, in fact. She's been doing this since before Zeri was born. And Care very much getting the advantage in the mid lane 1v1. And to be honest, it feels like all series, Care's pretty much been getting the advantage in this mid lane.
Yeah. And I think that's such a huge kind of talking point to revisit, because in spring, Care was, in a lot of ways, the reason why FPX went out of those players. His Azir play was disastrous, and I'm sure he's looked back on that series and rued those opportunities in that series an awful lot, especially given the level of form of the rest of the members from FPX. Now here in this series, I think he's been playing fantastically. I think he's made up for that series, absolutely. But now the question is, can you get it across the finish line? Does that effort mean anything? You lose this game, and while it might be a fond memory, it's not getting you any further at this point. FPX, this could be a year of oh so close for them, and I'm sure a lot of people out there would want to see that continue beyond this.
It would be heartbreak, wouldn't it, if that was the way that it ended. And I think Care would maybe blame himself a little bit for that result back in spring, like you say. But he's looked so good today. He's managed to get himself MVP performances and now dominating lane against Ucal. Ucal is kind of the opposite story, right? Where it felt like towards the end of this split, he'd started to come into his own a little bit, not had the best, you know, split, not really had the best year overall, to be honest, compared to previous. But perhaps here in Game 5, that's where he can step up and make a difference. Perhaps not, though. As a 4th plate goes down in the mid lane.
Yeah.
He is on Zeri at the end of the day. Like, there's plenty of time to scale, but that's what we thought about Smolder, and that didn't find a win.
Yeah. This is the kind of game where you will probably want to watch back in terms of that, if you can find the pro view of Care or Ucal. See how important that gank was from MilkyWay earlier. We said that TT stopped him getting involved in the early game. That one chunk onto Ucal as soon as he teleported back to lane has led to this. He hasn't had that clean reset. The teleport's back off cooldown now, but ever since that gank, which is of course a long time ago now, Care has been using that health advantage to keep pushing in again and again. Feather and Beichuan have been able to bail him out of his lane a little bit, but it's not before that demolish proc on that Tristana has kept coming down time and time again. Ucal, who has been Mr. TT for the last 2 years, dyed his hair the colors of the team, is not having the game he would want in this early game in Game 5.
Let's see if they can get the rest of the A team on board as well. As Ucal, oh, big damage out from Care. He's got his Blade of the Rune kick, and he knows it. He's looking to finish off the first tower of the game solo in the mid lane in just a straight-up 1v1 matchup.
Yeah, folks, if you ever underestimated the power of a pressure gank, which doesn't get a kill but forces someone down as low HP just to get back to lane, this is a fantastic game to go back and watch from it. So, again, keeps coming back to this point where TT, they wanted to play through lane. They just lost first turn of the game, solo mid lane to Care. This is not what you expect in this matchup between players. It's not what you expect between this matchup between champions. And you certainly don't expect it or want to see it for TT in a Game 5, a deciding game for both these teams. This will be the last game of 2024 in the LPL for the loser of this game.
I'm pretty sure Life just stole a bunch of the local gold from that tower, which is not really,
as all self-respecting support should do.
Yeah, just like, all me. Snags a bit of gold there. Not 100% sure if I saw that right. Could have just been the standard tower gold there, but I didn't actually see the number. Either way, Care off to a phenomenal start. It's not led to a massive lead for FPX, just 600 in their favor right now, as Care now moves up to face up against this Renekton. Now, we've not really talked about top lane at all this game. It's been...
We have to, though.
Yeah, it's been a quiet lead for the side of Hoya, but he's only 100 gold up, and at the end of the day, it's bloody Ornn. Like, who cares if Ornn is 100 gold down?
That's the problem. What did we say coming out of grad draft? What have we said coming through this early game? TT wanted to play through lane. 100 gold lead on a Renekton versus an Ornn is not it. We talked about this in the previous games of the series. There's a margin, you play with it. If you're not 10 CS up and a bunch of gold, like minimum in early game, there's probably something going wrong. Now we're getting towards 14, 15 mark. ZDZ is going to get the second tier of his ultimate soon. He's going to get towards that point where he's going to just be a better teamfight champion than the Renekton. Hoya has not met the mark for that so far, and now Ucal caught out on a side lane. This is not what they want to see.
Life and MilkyWay are here. There's 3 minions remaining. Call of the Forge God sounds as Ucal knocked up again, but the lightning clash isn't enough. No, it's enough for Care to grab first blood at 14 minutes.
It's been a long time coming, but it goes to FPX. They have stunted TT's early game. It's also marked for MilkyWay too. Deokdam now somehow caught out randomly in the enemy jungle, but there's no one really to punish around this. Worth noting, TT didn't choose to teleport Hoya down to that play. They left Ucal to die that. They knew that it was likely going to be a 2v4 even if Hoya did teleport him. It was massive overkill from the side of FPX, and it gets them something there. Is there going to be a response from Hoya? I mean, he's going to get, what, some gold out of the turret? He doesn't even, I mean, turret plates are already gone, so it's not even that. Hoya, once again, not really getting much out of this Renekton. It's after plates to spawn. They can get themselves maybe onto the map for this dragon. They saved Ucal's teleport, and that does mean they can maybe go towards what they have seen as a sole point win condition for a grand majority of this series.
I'm trying to work out where Care is going right now. It looks like he wants to trade for this dragon. He's moving straight up towards that top lane. Hoya is on the way towards the top lane, but the ward over the wall from Life, I'm pretty sure, is going to give Hoya a bit of a sign that this is not a tower that he wants to walk anywhere near. So he'll stick around in the tier 2 while the rest of his team pressure in this bottom side. That tier 1 in the bottom lane will be traded. A couple of pings on towards the tower in the bottom lane, though, because that's a herald out from Beichuan. And Ucal, he may be behind on the Zeri, but he is still a Zeri with 3 grubs. This tower might just fall in TT. Find themselves a fantastic trade.
Yeah, they do. That's a lot of good gold. Back into an important role. Ucal, he's going to get himself what looks like a first item Blade of the Ruined King coming through here. We do occasionally see that on this area. I mean, we saw it on the Kaiser earlier today. Turns out Blade is just all the rage here, folks. It does come through from Ucal, who probably just wants to cut through ZDZ as best as possible, especially with the Black Cleaver built up from Hoya. Maybe they can play front to back to try and take down that tank. And now getting towards that own break point gives you some routes to success here from TT. They do have themselves a lot of gold now back onto that mid lane, which was looking like it's blown out of proportion for Cat.
Really nice little injection of gold. And, you know, it's funny you mentioned Blade of the Ruined King really is all the rage at the minute, which Rage Blade is furious about that, because Rage Blade's typically been the rage. But
damn you, Viego!
I mean, there's a lot of people that have said that over the years, especially when he first
true.
came out. That was a sentence I'd said many times. And honestly, it's a sentence we've seen said during this series. You remember game number 1? It feels like a long time ago. We saw that Viego Aurora combination. It was certainly potent. But like I said, a long time ago now.
Big tower trades coming across the map. Lots of demolishes up for FPX, and of course Ornn, one of the best users of that, going to use the 3 grubs, which they have, which is split across the board to make sure that the turret trades still keep flowing across the map. I think also another thing, I think it's now important because we're going to get our big fights coming in soon. We haven't really seen a 5v5. So how do these teams operate? So this is something that we've seen coming up a little bit. We saw it a little bit in PCS, I want to say, and I believe we're starting to see it in the LPL coming up again too. Brand Varus is insanely good at killing tanks. The percent HP and the ultimate of the Varus ultimate pitting people in place for the Brand to do damage like this can be a big, big problem. So watch out for FPX's front line. If they get caught with the Varus ult and the Brand within combo range, that's how TT win fights. That's huge for them. On the other side, you're looking to punish the Brand and the Varus themselves because they're immobile, and you have a Varus, you have yourself that Ornn, you have yourself the Rakan, so it is really about how that backline will be able to get themselves out.
Oh no! Feather tries to predict the W, but he just hooks way too early. Oh, so close to a pick for the side of TT. I just can't believe quite how slow of a game this one is compared to the rest of the series. We were talking about statistically TT are the bloodiest team in the LPL, and FPX were not that far behind them. And yet, here we are, Game 5, when it matters the most. Both teams so nervous to make a mistake.
But what this means, Joe, and this is the bonus of this, hopefully the first 5v5 of the game is going to be all fireworks. Hopefully when we've got, you know, good enough gold across the map, it'll start coming up to huge plays beyond that point. Getting first items coming through into second items too. We just saw the Mikhail's built up for life. That might be very important because that first stun coming through from Renekton, coming through from Brand or Varus ultimate can be huge. One of the things what we were talking about in the big win conditions, well, that Varus ult into the Brand. The same can be said of the Renekton buying into that too. If that Mikhail's can stop that win condition, that could be very important for FunPlus Phoenix. Have a minute until that Dragon. Like, everyone's eyes are going to have to be on the minimap to see where those next fights are coming to be. It'll either be at that Dragon or the setup of it. We know that we haven't always fought directly around those timers.
I really hope that we do get some big 5v5s in this one. I feel like a lot of the fights across this series have been based off of picks, haven't necessarily been a proper 5v5 team fight like you'd hope to see, which is not always necessarily a bad thing, but it would be nice to finish on some fireworks. The one thing I will say, TT, if they do fall behind in this game, it suddenly becomes really difficult for them to ever get control of anything again. Like, Renekton, not the best face checker in the game. Nautilus, a similar story where if you do have to be the one first in against the damage out from a Tristana, from an Ezreal, from a Kindred, probably won't survive long in the fight that follows, and Ornn's really good at following up and starting a fight. So TT, these next few minutes and potentially this next Drake could be a decider in that regard.
So FPX, they get themselves good vision control. Their setup for the objectives, once again, is very good. God, when you're walking through that brush. The fog wall from TT has got to be terrifying at this point. Beichuan needs to be careful not to stack up into a choke point against him. You've got to be careful not to give those resets over to the Varus passive as well. Very, very powerful on this patch. FPX, they have the ability to stop that Brand, the Zeri, and the Varus, but they can't disrespect them.
4 stacks for MilkyWay, by the way, so it does have that range increase. Call of the Forge God, and ZDZ flashes to make it happen. Beichuan, the target, and found a triple knockup from Life as Care is on the bottom side, but he dips away as they try and jump onto him. Deokdam getting the damage down in the meantime. It's 4v4 on the map right now, but there's no jungler for the side of TT as Deokdam chases TT away, and Care is on the flank right now. There's no tower to get onto, and they're slowly being picked apart. It's the Drake for FPX, and perhaps a little bit more. Feather flash away from his life, finds the knockup as well, and the Lamb's respite keeps FPX afloat. 1xN falls, not a single casualty in the follow-up fight. FPX are large and in charge.
And MilkyWay pulls the Lamb's respite out at the best possible moment. TT, that was their moment to make a difference, and they cannot do it. FunPlus Phoenix getting themselves all of that damage, all of those AD carries involved in that last play is so powerful for them. The Ornn ult to start things off with the flash follow-up to make sure that Beichuan cannot get the huge combo it wants is the difference. Look at the difference in the engage between FPX and TT. Yes, there are health bars left from TT after this point, but they have been shredded so low that they can't deal with the Kindred, with the Tristana, with the Ezreal, with all their range and their mobility. Poor Hoya and Feather, they don't have the HP to look for a snap engage beyond this point. They are just fish in the barrel beyond this point. The encirclement comes through, and at the end of this, you see 1xN trying to flash into the Kindred ult after this point, but he just can't get enough done. He doesn't have the damage at this point. We're back into a fight.
Going again, and ZDZ's been caught this time. A good start for TT as Life gets onto the back line to try and answer, but he's caught himself. A double kill for Hoya as Deokdam will go down too. Ucal gets that, and it's Baron is onto the map. TT, they found a miracle again.
All of our first 14 minutes of all quiet on Summoner's Rift have been made up for here. 10 kills in the ensuing 10 minutes. And it's going to be Baron over to TT. Just as we were praising FPX for using their mobility, chasing down TT when their engage is gone, TT fight back even harder. We didn't even catch the start of that fight. I'm sure we'll get a replay of it, and here it is. How does this start? Beichuan, he's a Brand in a choke point. Gets knocked up at the start of this, but it's not a full combo. And then they have to respond into the Brand ult. It's a passive onto 2 people. MilkyWay can't be the difference maker. We've seen this all year, folks. You can't go into a choke point versus Brand. Beichuan makes the difference.
Just when we thought it was done and dusted for FPX, TT find their fight, and it's Beichuan shredding everybody with the Pyroclasm and with his passive. And suddenly TT are straight back into things. We are 500 gold apart between the two teams. And you see 53 to 47 win rate.
Oh my god.
It couldn't be closer here. And it's game 5. This is still round 1 of playoffs. And this is how close our series are. It's 2 minutes until the next Drake. FPX maybe still with an advantage, but it's minor at best.
Folks, this is why we love the LPL. Round 1, and it's still just so exciting. Baron buff being used, Beichuan looking for the stun!
Deokdam low, knocked up by the death charge, but he will survive. The Call of Forge God tries to save him as well. Tower down though, and Hoya's just charging on forwards. Ucal is starting to stack up on this Zeri. Deokdam low on HP, a true shot barrage is good, but it's not good enough to save these towers.
And FPX, they start falling apart to the random pick potential. Beichuan, his brand has been so key to TT's success in summer. And as the last remaining Nevada group team in what could have been their last game of this year, backs against the wall, they found a couple of really clutch plays back to back. It cost them a load of the flashes, but they'll absolutely take that. This is a good Baron power play for them, and they still have a minute left.
Not like this, FPX. Not like this, MilkyWay. Surely the story doesn't end off of just random picks like this. Deokdam caught out by Beichuan. The follow-up is good from the rest of the squad here. TT finished the tower, and Ucal just free-fires.
I mean, Deokdam doesn't even die from this. Deokdam's caught out, but I mean, you can say that actually the overstay from the rest of the members is maybe where the fault lies after that point, because it's Care that goes down. Care, such a good series from him. After, again, a weird year from him. He was one of the big reasons in spring why they couldn't quite cross that finish line in that best of 5 they played back then. It is so difficult watching these teams, which we've watched all year, come down to this so close, within a couple of thousand gold. It's a big Baron power play, though, for TT to get the map advantage and get themselves some extra advantage on the board. Dragon's coming up in 20 seconds. FPX don't have the setup this time. It's a rarity for them, I know. They've been the ones with the better setup. And sadly, look at how Life has been playing these fights. He can't get himself into the positions he wants.
Will just be a tower on the top side for FPX here, as the Drake is spawning and TT will get themselves to Soul Point. FPX just trading opposite instead, not willing to contend right now. Not that surprised after how the last couple of fights have gone. They do still have 380 carries and an Ornn, so I can understand a thought process here for FPX saying, look, let's wait 5 minutes, let's just scale a little bit more, get a couple more items. Maybe in 5 minutes time, we'll be scaled enough to try and take them on. You're against Deseri and a brand. They ain't slowing down.
This is the problem. You have the Ornn. Yes, it's the Ornn versus the Renekton, and that individual matchup's gone well. Hoya has not necessarily been the player to crush this game through. He has a large advantage now, but that wasn't through the individual 1v1. This is where the brand Varus comes to play, and this is why I think we will see the return of Varus. Varus is really back in the on hit because of the changes to the passive and some of the items working in his favor too. Ornn does not survive the brand Varus. You will probably need to blow a Kindred ult onto him to keep him alive, and that is not what you want to see. The damage and the gold available to Beichuan and 1xN means that the frontline from FPX needs to play very, very differently. They did have that win condition to play through laning phase. That didn't work out for them. They had a fallback option of the anti-tank damage coming through from their backline. FPX need to stop that coming through.
Oh, Ucal, no, not like this! He's caught out. He does manage to survive somehow. The Call of the Forge God finds 1xN. Instead, Care jumps over, but 1xN flashes to safety. And just the way that TT found a lead for themselves, they almost lose it.
This game, game 5, it could come down to one of those miracle picks. We can talk about win conditions, we can talk about 5v5s. If you're out of position, yeah, Nautilus Hook, Ornn, Rakan, all of this stuff could flip the game on its head. We've got Baron spawning in a minute, Dragon spawning in next to you at this point. A fight there wouldn't have necessarily ended up with the objective, but this is what we've been saying about these teams in the LPL. Sometimes you can fight for summoners, and now suddenly you've got that flash out of 1xN. That's actually more important than getting Ucal out of position. Just as we say that, these fishing for summoners, fishing for the engagers continues. And FPX, they need to be so careful when they don't have those big ults available to them. That's what they use to stop TT's anti-tank getting the damage done.
Remember, Deokdam and Life moving over from Korea this year to try and make a name for themselves here in the LPL. And this 2v2 duo has had its ups and downs, but they have had some really big moments, and it feels like this Ezreal for Deokdam needs to be a big carry for his squad. You've got Care in the mid lane who's having a fantastic game, but 1xN really has been the main character of this bottom lane so far across this series. Deokdam finally gets that Ezreal for a game. Let's see if he can have a similar performance without the ease forward that we saw from 1xN. Maybe this is his chance to take over something as TT. I mean, we saw that fight down in the bottom side where FPX just kind of outranged everyone on TT and just corralled them. I'd love to see more of that from them, but it does feel difficult to achieve.
I think one of the things which is going to really hurt that, watch where the Rylai's burn goes. If you're walking forwards as the Kindred or the Tristana and you do get tagged by some of that damage, it's much harder to play for your range because you're slowed by a heck of a lot if Beichuan gets himself that DOT on team. I will say that FPX, they do still have a lot of ability to spread and make sure that they don't get themselves that clumped fight, and they have been using their vision control well to make sure that fights are starting on their terms, but you can't deny the power of this brand in this late game. We've seen him do it all year.
ZDZ on tank duty here, looking for further, and here comes the choo-choo train, but no! Doesn't get the second hit, and MilkyWay's being burnt down. Lamb's Respite already used here, as on the front line, Beichuan gets into the Lamb's Respite himself. The shield is there, and Mikhail saves the day, but FPX are so low. Arrows fly in, and a knock-up from ZDZ nearly saves the day. Stun from Hoya as Care tries to carry, and he might just do it. 1xN falls, and Care wants redemption from Spring as he takes the game by the horns.
I think they've done it! I think they've cleared the clouds! The ThunderTalk might have just fallen to a whisper. Deokdam and Care turn it around when they need it the most.
When it was all on the line, FPX, they went all the way to 5 games, but this story is not finished yet. This incredible debut from MilkyWay, this incredible year from the rest of the squad, they keep their playoffs and world's dreams alive.
ThunderTalk, blink and you miss it. The clouds are cleared. And the thunder is no more. It is clear skies to be flying in as a Phoenix. MilkyWay and crew will win their first best of 5 of the year. They will go beyond that first round. And ThunderTalk, it looked like it was in the palm of their hands. They had so much damage there. That team fight was won. They overchased, and FPX, they bounced back. What a hell of a clutch shot from them.
What a moment for FPX. They do make it to the next round of playoffs. I mean, this roster, such a fresh roster in the grand scheme of the LPL, and yet so much success. Making it to round 3 of playoffs last time around off seeding. This time, they have to work their way through the bracket bit by bit, and they take that first step on the road. Next opponent, ALTT. We have to commiserate them as well. It's been a tough year for them. And they were the last team from that Nirvana group. They managed to qualify for playoffs, but unfortunately, that is the last game they will play for the year.
And we shall lock them away with the rest of the Nirvana teams with our happy memories in a heart-shaped box. No